The silence in the house had been the same ever since Grandma Rosa started going to bed earlier. Grace Ortega would sit at the kitchen table and count the cracks in the tile floor as if looking for signs in a shattered sky. Her small hands, shaped by years of working with clay, held tightly to an old wooden rosary, the only thing left from her childhood. It still carried the faint scent of lavender from a time when everything was still a dream. But that night, the silence felt heavier, as if the house, the furniture, even the holy images on the wall knew something was coming. Grace was 22, but her body bore the weight of reversed time. At 10, she had been diagnosed with a rare form of uterine cancer. The doctors said, what they always say in extreme cases, we had to remove everything to save her, and she was saved. But she grew up with an emptiness in her belly that weighed more than any missing organ. She had never had a period, never dreamed of having children, because she had been taught not to dream. She was supposed to accept, to live with gratitude. And Grace, ever obedient, had done just that. Until now, that morning before the kettle began to whistle, the nausea came, violent, a cramp that rose from her gut like a wave of salt. She rushed to the bathroom and knelt before the toilet, like before a profane altar. She vomited, coughed, cried. Grandma Rosa appeared at the door with a worried look. Empty stomach, mija. I told you not to skip dinner. Grace didn't answer. The taste in her throat was more than bile. It was a premonition. That night Grace went to bed early. The nausea hadn't stopped, and her head felt as heavy as if it carried the weight of the world. In her dream, she stood in an open field, and everything was white. The sky, the earth, even the leafless trees. At the center, a woman in a light blue and white mantle walked toward her. Her eyes were kind, her voice as soft as a spring. Prepare the cradle, my child. Life has triumphed. Grace tried to speak, but her throat didn't respond. The words went straight to her heart. The next morning, before coffee, Grace walked to the local health clinic in Santa Fe. She asked for a pregnancy test, even knowing how absurd it sounded. The nurse laughed. A test, Grace? You don't even, please just give it to me. Half an hour later, her world flipped upside down. 2 red lines. Positive. The nurse turned pale. It must be defective. I'll redo it. No need. I already know. Grace left the clinic with trembling hands. It wasn't possible, but it was. Life had said yes. Coming home felt like stepping into a courtroom. Grandma Rosa listened, remained silent, and slowly made the sign of the cross. Our Lady, are you sure? Grace showed her the test. Her grandmother sat down slowly. The doctors said, I know what they said, but I heard her voice. Grandma Rosa covered her face and began to cry. Then it was Our Lady of Fatima who visited you. You really believe that? To not believe would be to deny everything I've lived. The news spread through the neighborhood faster than the desert wind. Some laughed, others whispered. A few said Grace was lying, others that she was a desecrated virgin. Father Thomas called for Grandma Rosa. The girl is confused. This is dangerous. The one who's confused is you, Father. Miracles don't ask for permission, but the man in black had already sent letters to the state hospital in Albuquerque. Doubt had turned into official complaint. In the city, Dr. Charles Salas reviewed the old medical files. Grace's history confirmed. Her full hysterectomy at age 10, no uterus, no chance of pregnancy, but the blood test was undeniable. Elevated HCG, fetal heartbeat. This is a clinical absurdity. Dr. Emily Carter, a younger physician, looked at the ultrasound images with quiet awe. What if it's real? Nothing is real outside of science. But inside Grace's belly, a heart was beating. She was isolated. The doctors treated her like a rare case, an anomaly. She was given a cold bed in a hospital with no faith. Alone, she clutched the rosary her grandmother had given her. Mother of Heaven, don't leave me. That night, she felt a gentle flutter. In her womb, the first movement, a ripple under the skin. She smiled, "Hi, my love," and for the first time she called herself a mother. The next morning, Dr. Salas returned with a group of specialists. Grace, we need to repeat all your tests. We're transferring you. I don't want to leave. It's necessary. This fetus could be a tumor. It's a child. There are no such things as miracles, Grace. She looked at the doctor as if watching a blind man trying to describe colors. Then explain. To me, why I'm still alive. Silence, the weight of the unexplainable, and the faith of a woman about to shake the world. The transfer to Albuquerque was urgent. Grace was moved like a dangerous secret. In the ambulance, the rosary still rested in her hand. 3 nurses accompanied her. One of them, Emily Carter, kept her eyes on her the entire time. "Are you scared?" she asked. Grace hesitated. "Only when people treat me like a mistake." The vehicle shook through the desert curves, but the world inside her felt still, eternal. The hospital in Albuquerque was cold, modern, impersonal. No one called her by name, only Patient 227 or Grace Ortega. The tests began that same day. Ultrasounds, MRIs, tissue samples. "This is a clinical phenomenon without precedent," Dr. Salas said to a group of residents. Grace, sitting nearby, felt like an object. Dr. Carter, silently taking notes, had something in her eyes, something like doubt or maybe shameful faith. On the 3rd day of her stay, Dr. Carter returned to Grace's room with an envelope in her hand. She sat beside the bed. "Here it is, the new test." Grace took a deep breath. She opened it. 2 red lines. Again, "It's not psychological. It's not cancer." Dr. Carter didn't know what to say. She was facing the unexplainable. "Are you going to treat me like a human now?" Grace asked, her eyes brimming with tears. The doctor lowered her head. "I'll try." Meanwhile, back in Santa Fe, the news spread like dry fire. The girl who couldn't have children is pregnant. Some claimed it was a scam set up to get money from the church. Others whispered Grace was a modern-day Bernadette. During Sunday Mass, Father Thomas addressed the growing rumors. There are no miracles outside the doctrine. If God had something to say, he'd say it through the sacraments. But at the back of the church, Grandma Rosa sat in silence, gripping Grace's rosary like a banner of resistance. Days later, a journalist managed to sneak into the hospital. The headline read, "The Virgin Pregnant Girl of New Mexico, Faith or Fraud?" The media exploded. Reporters camped outside. Pro-life and secular activists argued in the lobby. Behind a curtain, Grace watched her image become the symbol of everything she was not. "They want to turn my life into a spectacle." Dr. Carter placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make sure it's a true one." On the 6th night, Grace woke up with a sharp pain in her abdomen. Dr. Carter was called in. "It moved," Grace said through tears. "I felt it." The ultrasound revealed the fetus was developing in an unexpected area, a residual uterine structure that had never been seen in any scan or surgery. Dr. Salas was summoned in haste. "This is impossible." "But it's happening," Carter replied, "and you can't treat her like an experiment anymore." While Grace was undergoing a whirlwind of scans and ethical meetings, someone was waiting for her in the hospital lobby. Her biological mother, Rachel, eyes lowered, hands trembling. "Can I see her?" Rachel asked. Dr. Carter hesitated, then nodded. When Grace saw her, she froze. "Why now?" "Because maybe God gave you what I never knew how to care for. I didn't ask anyone for a miracle, but you got one. And that baby is my grandchild too," Grace cried, but didn't hug her. A medical board proposed terminating the pregnancy. "Extremely high risk to the patient's life," they said. But Dr. Carter stood against it. "If she wants to continue, we must follow, not decide for her." Grace had been listening from the half-open door. She entered the room and faced them all. "I didn't ask for this life, but it chose me, and I'll protect it." No one answered. The woman, who was never supposed to carry. A child was now carrying an invisible army. One afternoon, Dr. Carter found Grace inside the hospital's small chapel. "Do you come here often?" "I speak with her." "With who?" Grace pointed to the image of Our Lady of Fatima. "She listens. When the world screams, she whispers." Dr. Carter sat beside her. "I never believed, but there's something about you, the impossible, Has a face, doctor. And for now, it's inside me. At the end of the second week, Grace was called in to sign a legal waiver. Refusing the abortion would put liability on the hospital. She read it, signed, then handed Dr. Carter a folded piece of paper. What's this? His name. Carter unfolded it. Written there was, Gabriel. The doctor, without knowing why, began to cry. It was already night when the storm hit Albuquerque. The wind howled through the hospital corridors. Grace awoke with a dreadful feeling. She touched her belly and felt the baby moving more forcefully than ever before. Dr. Carter burst into the room. There's been a leak. Someone published the ultrasounds. Grace's eyes widened. What? You're on headlines around the world. And the Vatican responded. Grace said nothing. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of the world. The next morning, Father Thomas read from the pulpit a statement from the Archdiocese. Every claim of a miracle must be met with rigorous skepticism. Unrecognized. Phenomena may be the result of confusion or darker forces. The church went quiet. Some parishioners left silently. At the back, Grandma Rosa sat with her eyes closed, like someone who had already heard louder voices than these. Back at the hospital, Grace began to notice purple blotches on her feet, a rare symptom. Dr. Carter linked it to the strain her body was under trying to sustain the pregnancy. You're in real danger now. I always was. Dr. Carter didn't respond. The weight of it all was pressing on both of them. Do you think I'm crazy? Grace asked. I think you're living something no one understands. Is that enough? That afternoon, Rachel came back to the hospital, this time with a small box. It's from when you were born. Things I kept. Grace hesitated but accepted it. Inside were photographs, a tiny baby shoe, and a letter never sent. My Grace, if someday you hate me, know that I was weak, not evil, but you are strong. You will be everything I wasn't, Grace cried. For the first time, she held her mother's hand. 2 weeks later, a new ultrasound revealed something unexpected. It wasn't just one baby. It was 2 twins. How is this possible? Dr. Carter murmured. Because it's not impossible. Grace replied, her eyes glowing. She left the room as if she had just crossed the Red Sea. Now, the battle was for both. A press conference was called in the hospital auditorium. Journalists, doctors, clergy, even Vatican observers were present. Grace walked in calmly. Sat in front of the crowd, a reporter asked, "Do you believe you're experiencing a miracle?" She breathed in. "I don't believe. I know. What if it's all an illusion? Then it's the most alive illusion I've ever felt." Silence. And then applause from a few, but genuine. That night, fanatics broke into the hospital, shouting that Grace was a demonic liar. Dr. Carter hid her in an unused wing. "I'm sorry. This should never happen." Grace, curled in a chair, whispered, "When the light appears, the shadows panic. You still think you'll make it?" "I don't." "We will." That same night, Dr. Carter returned home and had a strange dream. She stood in a white field. At the center, a woman in a luminous cloak watched her silently. She didn't speak, only pointed to an empty cradle. When she woke, Emily Carter was crying without knowing why. In the mirror, she noticed a faint mark on her neck, the same birthmark her mother used to say was a gift. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of faith. At the hospital, Grace was in constant pain. Dr. Carter offered to sedate her, but she refused. "I want to feel everything. If this is a miracle, it's made of flesh." She clutched the rosary tightly and whispered, "Isabel, Gabriel, you are my mission." Her hands trembled, her skin turned pale, but her eyes shone. That night, Father Thomas visited the hospital. He asked to speak with Grace. "What do you want, Father?" "To understand." "Understand what?" "How God dared to speak to someone who wasn't me." Grace looked at him with tenderness, because God doesn't speak to those who shout. He speaks to those who listen. The priest walked away in silence, for the first time without an answer. At 28 weeks, Grace could no longer walk. Her legs were swollen, Her kidneys weakened, and false contractions grew more frequent. You need complete bed rest, Dr. Carter warned. What happens to them if I die? Dr. Carter hesitated. They'll survive, Grace. Then everything will be okay. But she knew the risk of death was shared. Mother and babies were spinning on a roulette wheel, held only by faith. Grandma Rosa, frail from a lung infection, traveled from Santa Fe to visit Grace at the hospital. My flower, don't be afraid. Don't leave me, Grandma. I was just the beginning of your story. She handed Grace the old rosary. When I go, it will break too. But that's not an end. It's an offering. That night, Rosa passed away in peace. Grace clutched the rosary so tightly that the beads left deep marks in her palms. A quick scan revealed Gabriel was healthy. Strong heart, growth above average. This boy's going to walk before he's born, Dr. Carter joked, trying to smile. But Isabel was fragile. So small she barely showed on the screen. Almost still, Grace wept like someone who already knew. If I have to choose... Don't say that, interrupted Carter. We're not losing anyone. Rachel tried to comfort Grace, but everything felt too little. Why is she so weak? Grace asked. Because miracles bleed too, sweetheart. And what if it's my fault? What if I'm the reason she's in pain? Rachel took her hands. You are the channel, not the cause. At that moment, Grace felt a sharp pain. She began to bleed. In the emergency room, panic broke out. The delivery had to happen now, or all three could be lost. Grace, dazed by pain, heard a phrase that haunted her. One of them might not make it. She grabbed her belly and cried out, Isabel, hold on, my love, hold on. Her voice echoed. For a moment, Isabel's heart monitor spiked. Dr. Carter stared at it as if witnessing resurrection. Grace was rushed to the OR. Rachel and Dr. Carter held her hands. If I don't wake up, Grace began. You will, Carter said firmly. Because this isn't over. The anesthesia entered. Darkness came. In that darkness, Grace saw her again, the woman in the white and blue mantle. Do not fear, daughter. You gave me your yes. Now I give you mine. In the delivery room, the lights flickered. A partial blackout hit the hospital. But at that exact moment, a soft, bluish glow filled the room. Warm, serene, like dawn inside a chapel. Isabel was born. First, weak, purple. Dr. Carter held her like someone holding a promise about to break. Gabriel came second, screaming, strong, full of life. They're here, the doctor whispered. The impossible just breathed. Grace woke up hours later. Dr. Carter was crying. Rachel had fallen asleep in a chair beside the bed. The babies, they're alive. Grace smiled weakly. I want to see them. You can see Gabriel. For now, Isabel is in the NICU, but... She responded. Grace closed her eyes and whispered, Thank you. To me, to her. From the nightstand, the rosary fell and broke in half. Grace was wheeled into the neonatal intensive care unit. She saw Isabel connected to tubes, fragile as breath. Baby girl, you weren't supposed to exist. And yet, here you are. She placed her hand against the glass. You don't have to be strong. Just keep going. I'll carry the pain. Isabel opened her eyes for the first time. Two deep brown points, steady, as if seeing beyond. Something tore inside Grace. It wasn't pain. It was faith pulsing back to life. Father Thomas was notified of the births. That evening, he entered the hospital chapel and knelt before the statue of Our Lady of Fatima. Forgive me, Mother. I denied what was yours. Silence. And then a soft breeze flickered the candle's flame. Outside, the city slept. But inside, Grace's chest, faith was reborn, not as relief, but as courage. Isabel was alive, barely. A few days after birth, she went into respiratory arrest. Dr. Carter was called urgently. Rachel, beside Grace, could not hide her fear. Oh, God. Grace closed her eyes. No, no. The NICU alarm blared like a sentence. Inside, doctors scrambled. Dr. Carter injected adrenaline. Come back, little one, come back. Then, a faint sound. Isabel's heartbeat. Slow, fragile, like it was tired of trying. Meanwhile, Michael, Grace's oldest son from a previous adoption, now living in boarding school, had run away. He made his way to the church. "What did my mother's faith bring, Father? Pain. She believed, and now my sister is dying." Father Thomas listened silently. "Her faith isn't magic," he said. "It's a seed, and seeds grow after the ground breaks," Michael cried, for the first time without shame. In the early hours of the morning, Grace sensed a presence in the room. She woke suddenly, saw Isabel sleeping in the incubator. Smiling, she smiled, asked Rachel. Dr. Carter confirmed it. During a respiratory arrest, the next day, Isabel was seen moving her hands, as if in prayer. Dr. Carter filmed it. The medical team had no explanation. "She's responding to stimuli that don't exist," one of them said. But Grace knew she was responding to the promise. Dr. Carter, exhausted, walked into the chapel. A medical report slipped from her hands. It was a genetic test. Isabel's condition was terminal. "How do I tell her?" She returned to the room. Grace was waiting. "Tell me." Carter hesitated. "She might not make it past the week." Grace looked up at the ceiling. Silent tears fell. "God didn't promise me it would be easy. He promised I wouldn't be alone." "Are you?" asked Carter. Grace took her hand. "I am now." That night, Grace wrote letters to each of her children, one for Gabriel, one for Michael, and one last one for Isabel, who might never learn. To read, "If you must go, let it be light, and may the pain stay with me. I don't want a miracle, my daughter. I want you." Rachel found Grace kneeling in front of the incubator, softly humming a lullaby Rosa used to sing to her. It was as if she were rocking a soul. The next morning, Isabel had another arrest. Machines blared. A doctor said, "There's no more. Neurological response." But just as they were about to disconnect the machines, Dr. Carter shouted, "Wait!" Isabel opened her eyes. "This is impossible." There was no explanation, but Isabel cried, loudly, the cry of someone who had decided to stay. Grace's story and the twins' survival spread quickly. Religious groups and skeptics debated on television. For the first time, Grace spoke publicly. "I don't want people to see a miracle. I want them to see a mother and a God who loves in silence." The city listened. The country was moved. And Father Thomas, with tears in his eyes, called her a prophetess of hope. Months later, back at home, Grace reunited with Matthew, the man who worked the land nearby and raised his deaf daughter, Michaela. "I brought flowers." "For who?" "For you," Grace smiled. "Do you still believe in miracles?" "After what I've seen, I only believe in them." Isabel, now in Grace's arms, reached for Michaela. The two girls looked at each other like they'd known each other forever. Michael, more mature now, found the broken pieces of Grandma Rosa's rosary. He had it restored, gold and wood combined. "I want her to see that miracles don't just begin, they continue." Grace hugged him. "You were my first, yes, and you're my home," he said. Grace rocked Isabel in a wooden cradle she had carved herself. "Sleep, little one, the promise lives on." In the room, the candles flickered softly, the cradle swayed, the mother sang, and the world, for a moment, felt like it was exactly where it belonged. 6 months passed. Isabel was alive, still small, still fragile, but alive. Dr. Carter called. Her recovery incomprehensible. Doctors from other states and even Europe came to study the case. "The cells are regenerating," she explained, "against all genetic projections." Grace simply smiled. Miracles aren't meant to be studied, they're meant to be embraced. For the first time, Dr. Carter didn't disagree. In a small chapel, Gabriel and Isabel were baptized. Father Thomas, now a man transformed, held the basin with trembling hands. "I was blind," he said, "but now I see." Grace wore white. Rachel cried silently at the back of the chapel. Michael held a candle while cradling Gabriel. "We're finally a family," he whispered. At 10 months, Isabel still hadn't spoken. Until that day. Matthew was on the porch with Grace when the baby looked at the sky and murmured, "Lou." Grace froze. What did you say, sweetie? Lupita. It was her great-grandmother's name. Grace dropped to her knees, crying. Isabel pointed to the sky and smiled. Faith, now, had a voice. Michael began documenting everything. Grace's letters, the medical scans, the dreams, the names. The world needs to know, he told his mother, that a miracle happened, that you happened. He titled the book, The Cradle of Grace. It was published 2 years later. It became a symbol of spiritual resistance in an age of disbelief. Dr. Carter, profoundly changed by it all, left the public hospital system and opened a new center where medicine and faith worked side by side. Here, we don't just heal the body. Grace joined as a counselor for women with impossible diagnoses. I know what it feels like to have the world against you, she would say. With the help of the community, Grace and Matthew built a new house in the countryside. There, Isabel would run through apple orchards with Gabriel and Michaela, and with every step, the land seemed to give thanks. Rachel now lived in the back guest room. Finally, a grandmother in full. God gave me a second chance. And I gave you the first hug, Grace replied. Father Thomas, now old and sick, asked to see Grace one last time. You taught me what theology never could. Me? Yes, a faith that bleeds, but does not retreat. She held his hand. Now, rest. He died that night, smiling, as if he had heard a voice he'd waited a lifetime to hear. Grace had the restored rosary molded into 3 parts. One for Michael, one for Isabel, one for Gabriel. And your piece, Rachel asked, it's already inside me. What was once a symbol of a miracle had become a legacy of courage. Time passed. Isabel grew slowly, but strong. Gabriel was bold and protective. Michael kept writing. Grace sat quietly on the porch, watching them. They're not mine. They belong to the world. Matthew embraced her in silence. And you? I'm just the yes that allowed the rest to happen. One full moon night, Isabel lit a candle inside the chapel of their home. For her, she said. For who? Grace asked. For the woman in the white veil. Grace closed her eyes. At the back of the chapel, a breeze passed through, a gentle touch on the air, and a whisper. Life has triumphed. Years later, Michael, now 18, stood before a classroom in Santa Fe. He carried a worn copy of The Cradle of Grace and laid it on the desk. Today, we're going to talk about the impossible, he told the students. They listened in silence. This isn't fiction. It's my mother's diary. A student raised his hand. Is she still alive? Michael smiled. She's the most alive person I've ever known. Gabriel, now 16, wrote a letter to Isabel, who had recently been hospitalized. Again, with respiratory issues. If you go, I'll keep walking. But every step will be yours too, because I wasn't just your brother. I was your echo. He placed the letter beneath her pillow and held her hand. She woke up, smiled, and whispered, I'm still here. The miracle continued. One afternoon during a picnic, Michaela sat beside Isabel. Do you believe in angels? She asked. Isabel replied, I saw one. She was my grandmother. Michaela, once silent all her life, softly said, I did too. Everyone heard it. It was her first word. Matthew dropped to his knees. Grace, watching from afar, closed her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Rachel, now with silver hair and trembling hands, organized a novena in the home chapel. Who would have thought? I once ran from my daughter, and now I care for 3 generations. Grace helped her light the candles. Forgiveness is the hardest miracle, Rachel replied, and the only one that saves the living. Dr. Carter, now internationally respected, came to visit Grace one last time before moving to Rome. You rebuilt me, she said. No, I was just a mirror. And what did you see in me? A woman who listened, even without believing. The 2 embraced. For the first time, Dr. Carter cried without fear. Michael gave his mother a relic, the 3 parts of the rosary, now fused into a single golden cross. We're no longer fragments. We're whole. Grace held it close. This is the only inheritance I care about. And she hung it on the wall, right beside the image of Our Lady of Fatima. It was the twins' birthday. The house was full. Laughter, food, children running. Through the yard, Matthew placed flowers in Grace's hair. "Remember when you asked if I believed in miracles? I do. Well, now I sleep beside one," she smiled, "and you wake up with two." That night, Grace dreamt once more of the Whitefield. The woman in the blue-white mantle stood there smiling. "They are ready." "Are you?" Grace hesitated. "I don't want to leave them." "You won't. They are your echo." She woke with tears in her eyes, but in peace. Months later, Grace fell asleep on the porch, listening to the wind between the trees. She never woke up. Matthew found her with a smile on her face, the rosary in her hand. Isabel and Gabriel embraced tightly. Michael opened the old book and read aloud. "Life has triumphed, and faith remains." Years later, Isabel was grown. She was expecting a child of her own. She entered Grace's old room and found the wooden cradle her mother had carved long ago. She cleaned it. She wept. She smiled. "Now it's your turn, little one." She placed the restored rosary beside it. New life was about to begin, and on the wall, still hanging in faded thread from Rosa's hands, "Prepare the cradle, my child. Life has triumphed."